Once upon a time, there was a great divide in the country, which caused a great war. Forged in the violence of many battles, there arose a very brave young knight, who became known as a hero, and his legend preceded him back home. When the army returned home, they were greeted by the entire kingdom in celebration, and the heroic knight got to meet the princess, who honored him with a coat of arms. Being both young, attractive, and famous, they were quite taken with each other, and so they began a courtship, and things got very romantic very quickly. However, the princess's parents, the king and queen, were against it, as they wanted her to marry someone else at her own station. They had in mind a specific prince from another nearby kingdom, and told her that the knight, though a hero, was too lowly for her to marry and would do little for her royal status. But as she told them, she was falling in love with the knight, and those feelings were not going away. So she ignored the wishes of her parents and instead followed her heart, eventually marrying the brave knight and making him prince of the kingdom. The prince and princess lived in domestic bliss of being a happily married couple for a few years, but over time, those feelings of being madly in love with one another faded into the mundane monotony of adult life. After a decade together, they found that, like the rest of their country, they had simply grown apart. The passion and romance was no longer there in their marriage, and they barely even saw each other anymore. The prince, on the one hand, wanted to try to reignite the spark because he knew that they cared for each other and had vowed to be together forever, and felt that they could get back the passionate love they once shared if they just tried. But the princess, on the other hand, did not seem to want to put in the effort to save their marriage. And this was because, over the years, she had allowed her parents to persuade her against her prince, who were still trying to convince her to marry another prince from another kingdom who would be able to grant her more status and resources. And so eventually, she gave in and agreed to divorce her current husband in order to remarry. When the princess broke the news to her prince, he was quite surprised and very distraught, having never considered the relationship bad enough for a divorce, and never realizing that divorce was ever even a consideration of his princesses. He, of course, still wanted to try to get the chemistry and romance that they had lost back and make the relationship work, and he promised to return to the chivalrous courtship that they once had when they first fell in love. But she told him that she had already made her decision, and that her family had also been involved in it, and promised her hand in marriage to another prince, who would be coming to visit soon in order to get engaged to be wed. Her prince was devastated, heartbroken, which she could plainly see, and still caring for him, she told him that she was sorry it had come to this, and that she wanted to part amicably, and would always remember their time together fondly, and she wished to have one last intimate dinner together that Saturday, just the two of them, so that they could remember the good times and try to get some sense of closure. She then added that to make it easier for him to move on, he could take anything he wished from the castle, whether it be to furnish his new home with or just to remember her by, but that he must move out first thing that week so that she could then spend the rest of the week preparing to receive her new prince. And so, without actually having any other choice in the matter, the prince reluctantly agreed. That weekend, on Saturday night, the prince and princess had their chef prepare a nice, romantic, candlelit dinner for the two of them. And then they gave all of their staff the night off so that they could dine together alone in privacy. The prince selected some very special bottles of champagne, wine, and spirits to open, and as they ate, he would bring up things he remembered from their relationship and began making toasts and prompting the princess to drink with him. When the princess finished one glass, he would instantly refill it and make another toast. And so he continued to serve her more and more and more drinks that only got progressively stronger as the night went on. The princess, not being stupid, could tell that he was trying to get her intoxicated, and yet she allowed him to do so because, for the first time in a long time, she was having fun with her prince. So much fun that it reminded her of how joyful she had felt during their initial courtship, and she relished in getting a taste of those feelings back again. And so, throughout that night, the princess drank so much alcohol that not only did she become very drunk, but late in the night, she fell asleep, sitting right next to her prince in front of the fireplace, with her hand in his and her head laying right on his shoulder, just as if they were a couple of young lovers again. The next morning, the princess awoke with a start, for she felt like she was moving. She looked around and, much to her surprise, found herself to be in a moving carriage, with her prince still sitting right there next to her, holding her hand. Bewildered, she asked him, "My prince, what in heaven is happening?" And after a moment, he replied, "Well, my dear princess, you told me that I could take anything I wanted from the castle to bring to my new home. But last night, I realized that the only thing in the entire castle that I wanted was you."